Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app, O'Connor and Company.
It's 6:07, O'Connor and Company on this busy Friday morning. The day after indictments handed down in a federal court against James Comey. He's expected to surrender in Alexandria today. That should be a scene. What do you mean surrender? Shouldn't there be a raid at, like, the crack of dawn?
Right now. There absolutely should be.
That's what James
With all
Comey...
the TV cameras.
Yes, that's what they did to Roger Stone and so many others. In 30 minutes, we'll talk to Gordon Chang about this TikTok deal with China. 7:05, Charlie Spearing on Kamala's book tour. 7:35, the governor of Virginia, Glenn Youngkin. 8:05, Pastor Lucas Miles of Turning Point Faith. And 8:35, Kim Karath. She played Greta in the original film, Gretel, The Sound of Music, the youngest of the Von Trapp. I think she was 5 years old then. Wow. And she's in town because of the Sound of Music booking at the Kennedy Center. I think she's going to be there as a guest of Ambassador Rick Grinnell tonight. That'll be something else. What a time to be alive. It's Larry O'Connor with Patrice Onwuka. Good morning, Patrice.
Good morning. Happy Friday.
Yesterday in the Oval Office, the president made a big announcement with regard to TikTok. Let's go right to it. Cut 5.
Next, sir, we have an executive order on TikTok. From the first days of your administration, you've charged a team from your administration, led by Vice President Vance, with ensuring that we can preserve TikTok as a platform for the 170 million Americans who use it, while ensuring that their data is properly protected as required by law. With this executive order, you will be effectively bringing into effect the agreement that will save TikTok and ensure that it can operate safely and securely.
So this is interesting because I had a very good talk with President Xi. A lot of respect for him. Hopefully he has a lot of respect for me too. And we talked about TikTok and other things, but we talked about TikTok and he gave us the go-ahead. You know, it's run by American investors and American companies, great ones, great investors, the biggest. You don't get bigger, I don't imagine. And maybe I'll have J.D. J.D. was very much involved and in charge of it. And maybe I'll have you say a few words about the deal. He would report back, and the points of the deal, I think, are great for our country. So, J.D., do you want to give it a little talk, please?
Yes, sir. Yeah. So thank you, sir, for your leadership and for your help. We really couldn't have done this without the president actually ushering this deal over the finish line. There was some resistance on the Chinese side, but the fundamental thing that we wanted to accomplish is that we wanted to keep TikTok operating, but we also wanted to make sure that we protected Americans' data privacy as required by law, both because it's the right thing to do, but also because it's a legal requirement of the law that was passed last year by Congress. So we think that we were able to do that. Of course, we're going to keep on working at it. But this deal really does mean that Americans can use TikTok, but actually use it with more confidence than they had in the past, because their data is going to be secure and it's not going to be used as a propaganda weapon against our fellow citizens. We're very excited about it. We appreciate the cooperation of everybody involved, and it's a big day.
All right. He went on because he was asked specifically about the damaging algorithm that seems to push garbage, junk propaganda and damaging content to American children specifically. He responded. Here's the vice president.
Mr. President, and Mr. Vice President, the U.S. company could change the algorithm to push different content? Is that...
The U.S. company will have control over how the algorithm pushes content to users, and that was a very important part of it. We thought it was necessary for the national security element of the law. We also just think it's important to protect American users. Again, we want users to use this platform the way they want to. We want the business to make decisions about content based on the interests of the business and based on the interests of the users, and that's what we think will happen with this new arrangement.
And they're paying a lot of money, and I think hopefully it's going to be a great deal. They're very sophisticated people.
Yeah. So what does this mean? It's a $14 billion deal, we're told.
Yeah.
China still approves the deal, so we're waiting to hear if China is going to approve it. The fact that we have to wait for China to approve something like this. We can cut this off at any time. We can just say no more TikTok in these borders.
Remember, the Biden administration banned TikTok, so this effort that President Trump has been doing to delay that ban from being enforced was really just to ensure that it doesn't happen. And so this is the deal that would kind of cancel out what the Biden administration did.
Well, so to clarify, it was an act of Congress.
Sorry.
That
sure.
Biden signed in, but it was specifically
Yes.
timed to take effect during the Trump presidency or during whoever would be president at this time. So, yeah. The deal satisfies the requirements in that national security law, which requires that ByteDance, which is the China-based company, sell all of its U.S. operations or face a ban. And this has been delayed and delayed since the opening weeks of the Trump administration. China, again, has to still approve it. The new joint venture company will oversee TikTok's U.S. business. ByteDance still retains a little under 20% stake. This is Oracle, this is Silver Lake, and a company out of Abu Dhabi called MGX Investment Fund. But it's perceived that it would be Oracle, the tech giant out of Silicon Valley, run by a billionaire and a loyalist to Trump. Well, I don't know if he's a loyalist, but a supporter of Donald Trump. Let's leave it at that. Mr. Ellison. Larry Ellison. So, where this ends up, we're not sure. And there are a lot of questions. We had the question about the algorithm there. Sure. What about data collection? What about content collection? What about your, sign-ons? What about how this app watches or spies on other things that you do? Will they collect that data as well? Who retains that data? Gordon Chang knows about a lot of this stuff, and even better, knows about the maniacal plans of the Chinese communists in Beijing. He'll be joining us at 6:35 about this. Listen, the Trump administration and people like J.D. Vance and others that are involved here seem to be on board with this. And the fact that the algorithm is controlled by U.S. interests does help. But I still don't quite understand why we have to have TikTok in the first place.
Well, I mean, it's interesting. So I fully supported us banning TikTok. Congress enacting legislation to do so, and for national security reasons. I think there are also some their content reasons and data privacy reasons. Sure. What's interesting? The deal will establish a new board of directors for TikTok. There is some in place new content moderation system that will be erected, and hopefully the new user data will be held by a U.S. company. Now, to add to your list of questions, I wonder, well, what about the current user data that China has had access to? And there is reportedly incidences where China was able to, where ByteDance shared all of that user data with China. So, kind of the cat is out of the bag at this point. That said, we see the value of TikTok, which has been massive in grassroots organizing, particularly for Republicans who had lagged behind social media use on TikTok, and the President Trump used TikTok pretty effectively during his most recent campaign. I have held off on joining TikTok, and maybe now I will join it after this deal is enacted. We'll see how it goes, but it is important for me, that the national security issues are taken off the table. When it comes to the algorithm, when it comes to the kind of content that we're being fed, our children are fed. Excuse me. It's one of those days, Larry. Yeah. But those still are going to be questions that, frankly, linger with American social media platforms like Meta and Instagram and Facebook. So, this deal will not solve all of those problems, but I think it will allay some national security fears, which to me were the biggest concerns with TikTok.
Well, there's social rot concerns that I have as well, as the Chinese have been specifically trying to undermine our culture by pushing garbage and transgender policies, and the content that you see pushed toward children in China on TikTok,
very
with their version
different.
of TikTok, is very different than what you see pushed towards our children here. All you need to know about the political left in this country, led by the Democrats, is that they basically said nothing while China and the communists in Beijing were pushing all this garbage to our children at the time. But now they're very concerned that a conservative aligned with Trump owns TikTok. Now they're upset about TikTok. This is really this is terrible. A conservative owns TikTok, but they were fine with the Chi-Coms. 6:15.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
As Abigail Spanberger continues to dodge questions about whether she supports the policy that allows men to go into women's private spaces, we have a bombshell development coming out of Arlington County with the case of registered sex offender Richard Cox. Now remember, Richard Cox is a man who entered on a habitual basis girls' locker rooms and exposed himself to girls as young as 11 years old. This was allowed to happen because of those very policies that Abigail Spanberger voted for and now will refuse to give her opinion on, as she wants to play out the clock and be your governor. Well, here's the development reported by Nick Minnock, a reporter who's been on this story since the beginning at WJLA. An Arlington detective testified today that registered sex offender Richard Cox, who says he is a woman, and by the way, you've seen the pictures of this man, right?
He is not. He does not look like a woman. He is nowhere near transitioning to becoming a woman.
Which, by the way, is impossible to do anyway. But certainly, to take the point of people who like to say that one transitions to be a woman, there seems to be no hormonal change. There seems to be no surgical change. Richard Cox has long hair, but that certainly doesn't make him a woman. Otherwise, he
could be a hairband.
Yeah, aging rockers from the 70s and 80s are all women by that description. Yeah, if this person identifies as a woman, they are not doing a very effective job. Who now says he is a woman and was allowed to use Fairfax County women's locker rooms. Now get this. He had the Fairfax County Rec Center children's swim class schedules on his phone. Not the regular swim class schedules, not the adult swim class schedules. He specifically had the schedule for children's swim classes on his phone, so he knew when kids would be at the rec center. Now, despite that, Fairfax County leaders, Police Chief Kevin Davis and Commonwealth's Attorney Steve Descano, refused to charge Cox for exposing himself to women and girls in the women's locker room at 3 Fairfax County rec centers. Today, the Arlington detective also testified that she found child porn and child abuse material on Richard Cox's phone.
Isn't that enough to arrest him?
Not in Fairfax County under Steve Descano, no. But that certainly speaks to motive as well. And then there's this. Registered sex offender Richard Cox in an Arlington court hearing where women are now testifying. By the way, let me just pause for a second. The last action that Steve Descano, the Commonwealth's attorney in Fairfax County, took with regard to the Richard Cox case was to reduce the charges against him.
Yes.
Okay.
Not to heighten them.
Right.
This man needs to be thrown under the prison, by the way. But please go ahead.
In the Arlington court, he's representing himself. So when women and girls have to testify about how he traumatized them, they have to look him in the eyes and answer his questions about this. Registered sex offender Richard Cox in an Arlington court hearing where women are testifying that they saw Cox naked in an Arlington high school girls' locker room. Cox said he's a woman, asked the judge to tell the prosecutor to stop misgendering him. The judge said, go walk off a plank. Judge said no and refused the request. One woman testified when she walked in an Arlington Girls High School locker room after a swim class for her young daughter. She saw Cox pleasuring himself in a shower stall.
That's disgusting.
With the curtain open. She said her young daughter was with her when she saw Cox touching himself. I'm trying to edit this as I go. Arlington Public Schools allows people to use locker rooms and bathrooms based on their gender identity. Once again, Abigail Spanberger has been asked repeatedly about whether she supports these policies. She has voted for these policies at the federal level, by the way, that allow them to happen. And she has said, we should let the local communities decide about what's best for them.
So, Abigail Spanberger, do you believe all women, including the women who are testifying to seeing this man pleasuring himself in front of little girls with the shower curtain wide open to give a live peep show to underage children? What about those girls? What about these women? I mean, this is beyond disgusting, and it should not be tolerated. And he needs to be behind bars right now. How many different crimes did you just read off? And this man is walking around literally victimizing women in the streets of Arlington County.
Yeah. He calls himself a woman, and the policies allow him to do this. Just ask yourself this, voters. How hard is it for Abigail Spanberger to say, this is awful, and I oppose this? She can't do that. Ask yourself why. It's 6:23.
All right, coming up, we've got Gordon Chang breaking down for us the TikTok deal. Stay with us. It's O'Connor and Company at 6:30.
WMAL-FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station. Making sense of the news. News Talk 105.9. News now. Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
6:37, O'Connor and Company coming up at 7:05. Charlie Spearing on Kamala's book tour. 7:35, the governor of Virginia, Glenn Youngkin. 8:05, Pastor Lucas Miles, senior director of Turning Point Faith. And then at 8:35, at 5 years old, Kim Carruth played Gretel, the youngest of the Von Trapp children in the film Sound of Music. She is in town for the Kennedy Center production of Sound of Music, and she will join us, and I am beside myself with excitement. How about that?
That's awesome.
That's
Happy
all
Friday.
coming up. You can go get yourself a cup of tea during that, all right? You Sound of Music hater.
You know what? No, I love wholesome content at the Kennedy Center, so I can get on board with that.
Patrice Onwuka is here this morning. Don't know how long it's going to last, I'll be honest with you. As she revealed earlier.
Is my dislike of Sound of Music a real deal breaker? Really?
We'll discuss it another time. We've got Gordon Chang waiting for us.
Yes.
Gordon Chang, of course, Gordon G. Chang on Twitter. Good morning, Gordon. Do we still call it Twitter? What's your TikTok handle, Gordon?
It's at GORDONGCHANG. And good morning, guys.
Good morning, Gordon. You're not on TikTok, though, are you? I guess the question is it okay to go on TikTok now? Listen,
good question.
The big concerns on this app have been, it's owned by the Chinese, of course. So the question is, which means it's owned by and accessible to the Chinese government, the communists in Beijing. Have they been able to will they be able to use this app to track our movements and our behaviors online and on our apps, including our voting habits and other private information, and acquire and keep that information? And does the algorithm push destructive, addictive, and demeaning content to our children, poisoning their minds? And does this new deal eradicate those two concerns, Gordon?
Well, first of all, the new deal, if it is as described, will be okay on data security because Oracle will be managing the cloud. On the TikTok algorithm, which is by far the most important of the three issues presented by the deal, I think it's going to be okay, but we need to see the details. We're still going to be licensing the algorithm from China, which means China will have some hand in it. But they say that U.S. engineers will build the algorithm from the ground up. Now,
interesting.
If that's indeed the case, then we're okay. But the big thing, though, is that although President Trump and Vice President Vance have talked about this deal as approved, and yesterday President Trump signed the executive order saying the deal meets the requirements of federal law, the Chinese have been silent about this. They haven't said a word since Friday, and Friday they didn't indicate they approved the deal. All they said was it's okay for ByteDance to negotiate with foreigners as long as they stay within Chinese law. So right now, there's a lot of uncertainty about this.
Well, I mean, let's pick up on that thread. From what we understand, President Trump talked to President Xi talked to him, and I think about this deal. And do you think that perhaps behind the scenes they maybe have come to some sort of agreement that China will in fact bless this deal, or is it going to be the case where China will never bless this deal and it potentially falls apart?
That's a great question. On Friday, when President Trump and Xi Jinping had their phone call, afterwards President Trump did say that Xi Jinping approved the deal, but we haven't heard anything from Xi Jinping, as I mentioned. So I think President Trump is telling the truth because there's a lot of specificity in what he has been saying. But again, it takes two parties to have a deal. And the other thing that's a complicating factor, always in the background, is that there are rumors that Xi Jinping has lost most of his authority. So we don't know if those rumors are true or not. We'll know by the end of next month for various technical reasons. But if the rumors are true, then President Trump is negotiating with an empty suit. That would really be a major factor.
That is incredibly intriguing. I want to follow up on that, but first on the TikTok deal. I mean, listen, federal law says that this thing should have been killed on January 19th, 2025. It's been extended a couple of times since then. And if the deal goes through, ByteDance retains a little under 20% ownership. They get a big payday. And China, or ByteDance, gets to retain the original technology that created the app. Faced with that versus an outright ban and the entire U.S. market completely removed from ByteDance's access, if they don't approve this, if China doesn't say, okay, go ahead with it, what does that tell you, Gordon, about what their real intentions are here?
Yeah, we know their real intentions are to use the curation algorithm to propagate all sorts of things, like, for instance, illicit drug use, promote suicide, support Hamas, meddle in our elections, exacerbate the divisions in American society. At the end of the first Trump term, Trump had put together a deal which fell apart, not over price, which is what most deals fall apart over, but over control of the algorithm. And that tells you why the control of the algorithm is absolutely critical on this deal.
So let's get back to that little tidbit you threw out there about President Xi. What are the signs of trouble here with him in terms of you saying that he's basically an empty suit at this point? Is this internal? Is this health issues? Is there serious problems with the Chinese people, or is it with the Politburo?
Well, it is with the Chinese military, where there are objective signs that he's lost control of it. There's also signs that he's had problems with his senior civilian officials, although there the evidence is not nearly as clear. The rumors are that at the Central Committee's fourth plenum, which is scheduled for next month, that he will lose all but his least important title. His least important title is President of the Chinese State. He will no longer be General Secretary of the Communist Party or Chairman of the party's Central Military Commission. Now, most people think that he is as strong as ever, but we are hearing rumors from independent sources that pretty much point in the same direction, that Xi Jinping is pretty much out as someone with authority in Beijing. As I said, we're going to know whether these rumors are true, and they really are fantastical, by the way. But they do point to, or they are consistent with the turmoil we can see in Beijing right now. Right. So something is up, Larry and Patrice. I don't know what it is. I don't know how serious it is. I don't know if Xi Jinping has recovered from all this, but something was up.
Where do you stand on the Julie Andrews, Christopher Plummer film of the Rodgers and Hammerstein classic Sound of Music, Gordon?
Well, I love Julie Andrews. I love Christopher Plummer. I love The Sound of Music. I will watch it every day if I could. But unfortunately, I got to talk to you two, so I can't watch it right now. So you two should just get off the phone so I can go back.
Go back to Sound of Music, you little goat herd. Thank you very much. That's Gordon Chang with the only correct answer to that question. It's 6:44.
Your next $1,000 could be one text away. It's $5K a day on WMAL.
Escalator gate is not going away. You'll remember that on the Sunday before President Trump's address before a joint session, the General Assembly of the United Nations, the London Times was reporting, quote now, to mark Trump's arrival, UN staff members have joked that they may turn off the escalators and elevators and simply tell him they ran out of money, so he has to walk up the stairs. Ha, ha, ha. Fast forward to Tuesday when President Trump was at the UN, heading up to the General Assembly to give his remarks. The second that he and First Lady Melania Trump stepped on the escalator, it stopped, ground to a halt.
Yes.
In fact, as
Kind of a funny coincidence, huh?
Yeah, I'll say. As President Trump described the moment, he said it stopped on a dime. It's amazing Melania and I didn't fall forward onto the sharp edges of the steel steps face first. It was only that we were holding the handrail tightly, or it would have been a disaster. Couple that with the fact that the teleprompter stopped functioning the moment he was supposed to give his remarks to the General Assembly. And there have been reports, including by Town Hall's Katie Pavlich, who was at the General Assembly reporting as part of the press pool, that all the speeches sounded fine in the main hall. The moment President Trump began speaking, the volume was reduced significantly. First Lady Melania Trump has also confirmed that, saying that she could barely hear her husband give his remarks. So it sure appears as though something was up. The Trump administration, on behalf of the federal government in the United States, has actually put forth a 358-word complaint. Oh, no. I'm sorry. That was just President Trump on Truth Social. he put forth the 358-word complaint just to the universe about this, but he called them.
However, the UN Secretary General is saying that they're launching an investigation. Correct?
Well, they claimed that there was a thorough investigation, but then they came back with the results within 24 hours. They claimed.
How thorough is that?
Yeah, I don't know how thorough it was. They claimed that there was a safety mechanism on the escalator that was tripped because a White House videographer at the top of the escalator was setting up for a shot, and that he tripped a kill switch on the escalator. Now, they claim that did not happen, so we'll see how much further it goes. Meanwhile, here's Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, who you would think has his hands full, running the state. Not so much. He took to the X platform. He put out a picture of the escalator at Trump Tower that wasn't functioning, and he said, "A real disgrace. Escalator broken at Trump Tower today. I've launched an investigation into this matter." So, he likes to tweak Trump on X, and I guess that's his latest.
When it comes to what the United Nations is trying to do, they can turn down the volume on his speech. They can stop the escalator. They can sabotage the logistics, and it still won't stop the man and the mission, which is to ensure that everyone's dollars that go into the United Nations are actually used wisely, and that people who are working for the UN are working for the betterment of the world and for the interest of their nations, rather than their own ideological agenda. So these snarky little people, and including Gavin Newsom, the best they can do is make a comment on social media. It's not going to stop the movement.
For Gavin Newsom to try to poke at Donald Trump and suggest that Trump, is thin-skinned or something, or making a big deal out of nothing. Let me tell you something. You ask anybody in Sacramento or anybody in California who knows Gavin Newsom, he is the most image-conscious, thin-skinned.
I could see that.
He can't play well with others. He is a narcissist with the biggest ego. Anybody who combs their hair like that is a narcissist.
Oh, really?
And his staff has been saying of him, he is so thin-skinned. The slightest little slight, he has to explode like a nuclear bomb has gone off. So look in the mirror, Gav, you little governor hair gel. 6:52.